it started off so much healthier, and now the competition is really starting to get there.
I've been playing Halo since I was too young to talk
Play
about
Halo.
on the show.
It's 2021. Having somebody with like, here are some actual facts.
I was in the room just playing a game and...
It's gonna be me, baby!
Prepare your stethoscopes, potions, apples, pieces of pie, and thermometers, because today, no, we're not entering the vaccine industry. Instead, we're going to talk about health in video games. Apart from riddles, puzzles, and problems related to level design, health is most often what determines the difficulty of a video game. Well, that and our self-control to not throw the controller into the TV screen. It's simple. The more damage you can take or recover from, the easier it is for you to progress through that adventure. Basically, as a great person once said, health is life. I don't know who, but they said it and it sounds good. The notion of loss of health is often linked to the reduction of the health bar, and it can manifest itself in different ways. The field of vision is reduced and tinted with red, as in FPS games. There are slower movements in Resident Evil. You shrink in size when you lose health in Mario games, and there is that incessant beep in the Zelda games that I can still hear to this day. And to recover this health, it's the same story. Video games have become extremely inventive. We can of course think of sacred care kits, less conventional fruits, or invigorating dishes. And of course, the most surprising technique is waiting behind a wall just so our life level increases again. Don't do this if you actually get shot in real life. But health is also in your head. And in fact, lots of games put this at the center of their gameplay. For you older lot, we can think of Max's long descent into hell in Max Payne. That scene with the screaming children still sends shivers down my spine.
No, please God, no.
See also Eternal Darkness and The Evil Within. A more recent example would be Hellblade's Senua's Sacrifice, which for me personally is a great representation of mental illness in a game.
Why did she do that? She shouldn't have done it.
Maintaining good health can also be the very concept of a video game's gameplay, especially in survival games. Don't Starve, DayZ, Subnautica, and The Forest. There are plenty of examples. But frankly, when you've lived through the year 2020, survival games don't really hit the same. Let's take a step back. According to a 2007 study, surgeons who play video games for at least 3 hours per week have better skills in the operating room than their non-player colleagues. Rebecca, pass me the scalpel. Don't worry, I need to cut this artery. When it comes to games in the service of medicine, there are surprisingly accurate surgery simulations. There are apps that help with our daily mindfulness, programs that look after our memory, and our physical condition.
Your workout is finished.
And if we push a little further, we can even talk about Pokemon Go, which gets us walking into rivers, walls, and ultimately to our demise to unlock content, but we're walking. Still, in short, dare we say it, video games are health, in every sense of the word. I'm joined by Rufus Hound, comedian, West End performer, and occasional politician, is that right?
Very occasional, yeah.
You also hosted the BAFTA Games Awards too.
I did the year that Dara couldn't do it, and then they immediately got back to him the year I wasn't there.
No.
Yeah.
And then also yourself, George Osborn, head of communications at UKIE, an occasional internet meme?
Yes, let's just throw it back to 2017. I was sitting there. My namesake, George Osborn, gets a job at the Evening Standard, and then I received thousands of abusive tweets to the point that the Daily Mirror ran an article about me titled "Man Named George Osborn Endures Weekend of Twitter Hell." So
Sorry.
it really was a treat, I must say.
And it was personally very upsetting because you're actually much more right-wing than George Osborn.
Exactly that. But you know, that was challenging for my mental health. But games, fantastic.
Games and mental health. There's an overall question about games in general. Are they healthy?
I think the thing with games is they're a fantastic part of your life, right? They are something that you can use to unwind. They're something that you can use to go and relax and chat to your friends. You can go and experience like these magnificent stories, right? But you want to make sure that it's part of a much wider life. You know, make sure you have loads and loads of interests outside of it. Make sure you're reading great books, watching great films, going out and exercising too, because then that way you can really appreciate games for what they bring. And that's the kind of approach that I take, is have it as part of my overall sort of life mix, and then just really make the most of them as a result of that.
I hear people say that, but it just flies in the face of my experience of video games. I grew up in the days where there was no connectivity to any of these games. So if the half term or whatever rolled round, that basically meant stick me on the end of my bed with a NES controller literally digging painful grooves into my plump little white sausage hands as I repeatedly over and over again try and get through the game without dying. play is a huge part of development for kids. And there is something about problem solving in abstract that all video games ask you to do. I remember with the DS, like the big thing was brain training.
Yes,
And
I remember
suddenly,
that.
you know what I mean? Like pensioners were on the bus with a DS and a stylus because, it's all part of brain training. There's like a legitimacy that has to go with these things. Oh, it's proven it's a helpful thing. Whereas I'm not overly convinced that just playing for the sake of playing isn't its own reward, that you don't have to legitimise it in a way. Just escaping from the horror of existing is enough of a balm.
When you talk about escapism, right? If someone says you escape into a good book, everyone goes, oh, that's a great thing. Right? But then when a lot of people said escape into a game, it's a bit like, that's very bad. You shouldn't be doing that. But it's exactly the same experience that you go through, except for the fact that with games, you actually often have that sense of control, right? You know, you're actually in there, you're part of what's going on, you're actually able to take part in something, and that can be, I mean, just genuinely so nice and rewarding, especially when the world is chaotic outside. I mean, we all know what the last year's been like, right? In terms of the glorious COVID situation where we have no control.
But isn't the problem that everybody basically hears video game and just immediately thinks Grand Theft Auto?
They immediately assume COD, FPS, all those kind of games, and then get the violent streak along with that. And I think that's
And there's a load of misconceptions about this, but when you look at like some of the more recent research into it, to go super interesting, right? Let's go into the scientific research, shall we?
It's 2021. Having somebody with like, here are some actual facts.
Here we go.
Feels crazy, but just take a wild swing.
I thought we were fed up of experts, but I'm going to take my chance, right? But so the Oxford Internet Institute, which was from the University of Oxford, they did research last year that actually showed that games are good for your mental well-being, and they tracked it by looking at actual player data. So what players were saying in a survey, but alongside what they were doing in games, and people who were engaging with games were much more likely to be talking about positive well-being, feeling better about the world around them, and having that sort of sense of being in control of the situation. And with lockdown last year in the UK, in terms of people who played games, 50% of people who played games reported they were happier as a result of playing them, and 39% were saying that they were less anxious or less isolated as a result. And it's like, those are real positives, and I think they can't be underrated. You know, we've really got to sort of hammer that home and say, games are much, much more than just GTA, however much I do enjoy it. I would say that as well.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with enjoying a little bit of a shoot 'em up sometimes. I do it. I've been playing Halo since I was too young to talk about on the show, okay? But at the same time, it's just an energy release. Sometimes you do want that escapism. I do it all the time.
The breadth of what video games can do now is so wide that it feels like even trying to talk about this as one thing is already kind of foolish.
Yeah.
So my son bought this PC with money he'd saved up and made it work, and now he sits with 3 screens, streaming Minecraft on Twitch with Discord running on the right-hand side. Ostensibly, he is playing Minecraft, and so therefore would exist in this conversation. But the friends he has made, the community that exists for him, the fact that that community is global. So if he wakes up in the middle of the night, obviously we turn the internet off. How could he ever do it? Well, he's a 13-year-old boy, so he's worked out how to do that. But like at whatever point of night or day, there is somebody there who can experience a virtual world full of joy and challenge and fun and stupidity that he's able to lean on. And he said to me in the car 2 weeks ago, honestly, Dad, without the Minecraft, without the streaming, I think I'd have been in real trouble over this lockdown. I think just from that one conversation, I would find it impossible to say that what video games can bring and what they have provably brought for my son and his friends is anything other than entirely excellent and healthy and wonderful. But it can also be the opposite, right? And we know that it can be the opposite. So it's tricky if you love video games to really make the case for the positive, because you know that whoever you're having the conversation with is just queuing up going, right, but...
Exactly, and I think it's actually super social, but it's one of those things about if you don't know that that's what's going on, you might just look at it and go, they're not answering when I'm shouting for them to come down for tea. This is driving me ballistic. So you don't necessarily see those. So it's kind of up to us to be able to go and say, actually, that's what they're doing it for. That's why they're doing it, and there is a benefit too.
I agree. Personally, I had to do this educating up, I did a campaign with my nan playing Street Fighter. And she was the person telling me as a child, you're always in the room just playing a game and, you're not playing, you're not talking to me and stuff like that. And then when she started playing Street Fighter this year, she's like, oh, great, I have to, yeah. And she's got really, really into it. And then I said, do you want to come play Street Fighter? She's like, yeah, let me bring my controller. I was like, where'd you get a controller from? So it's literally like, it's just that education process, you know. Hopefully that discussion's developing.
I'm 42 years old. I do not remember a time in my life where there wasn't a console in the house I lived in. Because my dad bought that Atari, one stick, one button, Amigas, Commodore tape loading. I had a BBC Micro. I could play Repton and Elixir and Imogen on.
I'm literally just like,
exactly.
No,
I was just sitting there, just being like, okay.
Back, right? But the way that video games still get spoken about, as if they just arrived last week, the horror of it is crazy.
And it's mad because if you look at the number of people who play in the UK, there are more people who play games in the UK than don't play, right? So it's about 37 million people in the country, right? Because especially since mobile games have appeared, like you've just had a huge opening up of the audience, and there's so many myths as well that the audience for games, it's actually 50-50 in terms of the gender split, and in terms of the average age of a player, it's actually now in their early 30s. And I think we're getting closer to that tipping point where people go, oh, actually, they're not all bad. Oh my goodness me, wow, fantastic. But at the same time, it's still taking a little bit of time there. And because the industry always changes and always evolves, there's always something new to learn about it, and that can leave people behind.
In the beginning, video games dealt with the concept of health as a win or lose situation. I am alive or I am dead, no in between. The idea of a health bar that slowly decreases would come from the tabletop role-play game Dungeons & Dragons in the 1970s, for which its two creators, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, created a hit point system to avoid the frustration of losing a character that players have built for several hours. You could say that this dedication to role-playing characters shaped the entire video game universe. While the history of the concept of hit points is not easily traceable, the video game Flash Boy, released in 1981, displayed a health bar to offer second chances to the players. There is no doubt that this has been a reference for a lot of game designers since. Dealing with health has long been a key part of the video game experience, but paradoxically, it also ignores the fundamentals of reality when it comes to applying targeted damage. In Resident Evil, you can aim for specific parts of the enemy's body, implying that it can impact their mobility, whereas our playable character's health is managed holistically, meaning that not much will happen when taking damage other than impairing the player's movement speed. Overall, the only video games that truly consider precise physical degradation are driving simulation games. But is it accurate to talk about the health of a machine?
One of the things I think is really interesting about what's happened with Minecraft, certainly over lockdown, is those worlds in which people make their, this is my fiefdom, this is my game, I play Minecraft. Well, what do you mean you play Minecraft? Well, I run around with a group of mates and we shoot each other with bows and arrows. Well, there's like 1,000 games that do that better than Minecraft. No, but this is where I do this.
Whenever I talk to any brand or anything that wants to come into the industry, I always say you have to understand what gaming community you're trying to enter. You can't just be like, I want to be in games. Okay, which one? Because there are these small communities that each community has its own influencer base and its own kind of key stakeholders and tastemakers. You've got to understand that.
I think that point about community as well, that's I think the really key point in all of this is that, in terms of those little fiefdoms or those places, it's where that person and their friends or the people around them come together. So for me, I actually do a lot of it in Rocket League. I have got a Rocket League team, Rocket Van Persie. That's a little bit of a pun. We're in a pub in Tottenham as well, so I'm taking a bit of a risk saying that. But it's one of those things where we come together and we play games, and we're trying to up our competitive rank. We're doing all of those kinds of things. But in those space between games, we're also just chatting about things like, oh, how's it going? One of my mates just moved house, so it was just like, oh, how did the house move go? And you just start having those conversations, and that's, I think, where you start getting as well back to this kind of point about games and mental health and where that benefit is those conversations are so important for keeping you sane and keeping you feeling like you're part of a bigger and wider world.
Speaking of games that you found community with, what kind of games have been helping you psychologically through this period of time? What have you been playing?
I'm not going to claim for a moment this game has helped me, but, but it is the game that I play more than anything else, and I bristled slightly because it's Rocket League.
Really?
Yeah. I would not claim that it has helped me other than just kill hours of my life.
All I've got to say is just come and join our lovely community. You
Yeah.
know, come on in. Like,
You're recruiting on my show.
Exactly.
Is this what's happening right now?
That's it. That's it. One of my teammates is going to be livid when he finds out that I just bumped him straight for this. But yeah, I mean, so for me, in terms of the games that have also helped, so the two ones. So the first one is Among Us.
Yes.
And then Mario Kart for me is the other one. So since lockdown started, I mean, actually, it's the year anniversary this week. Myself and a friend have been sitting there every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock doing half an hour of racing with the same group of people, just as a way of making sure that we're all talking to each other and all having a good chat. And what I will say is it started off so much healthier, and now the competition is really starting to get there. So the aggression.
Creeping in.
Exactly. We have to remind ourselves it's just a game. You know, take time out to the end of it. But those kinds of things, yeah, have really been keeping me connected.
Mario Kart's more than just a game.
It's more than just a game. It's a way of life.
It is.
It's very much a way of life.
Are there any games that you thought, okay, you know what, I have to stop playing right now, or I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to lose my partner? Like, are there any games that have kind of drawn that out of you?
Well, it's a difficult one for me because essentially playing games is kind of okay in my line of work. Exactly, lucky me. I will say I've had to draw myself away from Football Manager at times. You know, I've had to take a step away or two, but. You know, I've returned to my virtual management exploits at a later time, so you know that's been there. But
I owned a DS and played Mario Kart for hours and hours. But especially working in TV, where there's like endless hanging around and you're in the way, find somewhere that isn't in the way and immediately open. So within seconds, you're playing actual full-blooded Mario Kart. Was a game changer, and I got asked to not bring my DS to work at some point because they were like, you're literally like on the set looking down and hearing 3, 2, 1. So tell me, what and Words with Friends got a little bit out of control of just endlessly looking at my phone and trying different combinations of letters. That was one where my wife actually said to me, delete that app.
Yeah, the description about the way you play Words with Friends is very much how I text. Stare endlessly at the phone and just try a combination of words. So
I did wonder why you told me about that dog umbrella.
Okay, so which video game should we play to keep our minds in a good place during a week stay in hospital or 45 days during quarantine?
Right, caramba. I mean, 45 days is a very long period of time, but I mean, I would always say puzzle games. I would always say look at things like, I mean, something like Tetris actually just gets you into a nice, relaxing flow state. How
are you playing Tetris?
Look, okay.
Stress.
I find it relaxing because even though, look, failure is inevitable. And once you've accepted that in life, Tetris becomes much easier to play.
Nice thing to tell to someone in hospital.
Exactly.
Failure's inevitable.
How's that kidney transplant? Well,
failures. But I would also look at a lot of indie games, so things like Monument Valley. If you've not played it, it's a very simple, calming game where you're sort of manipulating isometric environments to solve simple puzzles. You know, because there's this whole range as well of quite relaxing games as well, especially in the independent development scene. So things like Florence. It's not one that's going to take up a huge amount of your time, only a few hours, but it's a love story. It's about two people falling in love in Melbourne, and you play it out just by tapping on your phone and things like that. So I would look towards those kinds of games. They tend to not have like a specified end goal per se, so it means that actually if you need something that you can go back to and spend 45 minutes, an hour a day or whatever going on to, always a great thing to do.
I would go with a sports game. If you're going to be in hospital 45 days, then the joy of a sports game is that you play it, like the cellophane comes off the wrapping, the disc goes in, and you go, well, this is impossible. And then, within a few hours, you're like, oh, right, I can do that. Oh, great. Even Everybody's Golf. Like, okay, you want something like super relaxing, play Everybody's Golf. You feel like you're outdoors, the birds are singing, your caddy will change, you can update your outfit. The actual mechanics of the gameplay are just literally the same thing over and over again. But each time you play, there's a slightly different problem to solve. And so by the time you're however many hours into it, you do feel like, oh, I got good at a thing.
For me, open world games like Witcher 3, that would just take me into another world. I would literally forget I was in the hospital if that was the case. And you can just do so many things, the side quests, killing the monsters, going to the brothels and, other things of interest are you a hypochondriac gamer? The type to fill up potions before facing a boss? I definitely am a hypochondriac gamer. Like, before I go to a boss, I make sure I've got the potions, I've got this for my mana, I've got this kind of equipment, because I'm not about to lose.
I mean, you use the word hypochondriac. I just say organised, right?
I like your thinking.
Exactly, prepared for success.
Yes.
I mean, that's the way that I like to frame
like
it.
that.
And I'd like to point out that I'm not at all like that. No, I'm complete chaotic. Like, yeah, sure, let's go and do this. Oh no, I've just lost
level
everything.
2 armor for a level 50 boss.
Exactly. It's like, this character I'm approaching seems to be much higher level than me. Let's just try hitting it with a sword. That's not gone well, has it?
If there was a game to be reimbursed by national insurance, what game would that be?
I would like one of those gem moving games on a phone.
Really?
Well, only because so many of those games are not games. They are programs designed to extract money from people that look like games.
Well, this brings up the whole topic about video games and addiction. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Have you seen a documentary called The Social Dilemma about how social media is sort of changing the society around us and pushing us further and further out to the edges? The argument made in that by the people who worked for the companies that are arguably the most problematic said, look, when we kicked all this off, we weren't trying to have the effect that the algorithm is having of pushing people to further extremes to keep them on the platform longer. We were just trying to keep people on the platform longer. The problem is that those algorithms for how long can we keep you with us is all built along kind of a Pavlovian understanding of do a thing, get a treat. With Twitter, your Twitter feed could update all the time automatically and you would just read all the tweets. But the point is you pull a thing, then there's a moment, and now you get your fresh tweets, hopefully that contain some fresh outrage, so the bit in your brain gets to go, oh, I'm angry, which is literally a chemical thing that is addictive. Pull a thing, do a thing, get a thing. Well, all of those mobile games seem to operate on that same mechanic, right? Like, do a series of things, get to a point where you're so close to being able to win. If only you just give us 60p, or an even better offer, give us £100, and then you'll get thousands of these little 60p's. Whereas Tetris, the game is entirely self-contained. Whether or not you progress is going to come down to how good you get at this. But, I mean, I did get to the point in my early 20s, having played it as a teenager, when I closed my eyes, all I saw were square blocks moving left and right and how I would need to rejig them in order to make them land properly. So I think the problem is essentially that our brains give themselves to wanting that sense of fulfillment. Straightforward games, puzzle games especially, seems to be able to be very, very good at delivering the goodness, the brain chemical goodness that we like. But I don't think there's very much we can do about that short of learning how to reprogram our actual brains.
It's a really interesting conversation because, because we were talking about games and perceptions of like other media, right? So a great cliffhanger ending a TV show gets you coming back.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about Netflix, binge watching, people kind of assume that's a positive thing. There's this sense that you want to build something that's compelling or engaging. Like that's what you want to do in any kind of creative media, and game developers are trying to do that. And then at the same time as all of that is going on, I think one of the big things about video game companies at the moment is that they're starting to think much more about this discussion and debate as well, and about to what extent they need to be actually stepping in and helping people. Because, we were talking about that question about balance earlier as well. And I think one of the key things for a lot of games companies is they actually realise that if you tip too far the other way, people become unhappy. And one thing about video games communities is they get noisy. They go loud on social media. And if you start it annoying, start irritating your community, or make them feel as if you're not looking after them, then they're going to go. In terms of my work, I've been running a lot of campaigns around helping parents with their children sort of sit down and go, how can we make sure that play is actually working for you lot, and that actually you're not getting to the point where it stops being the positive thing. And then the final thing as well is just about making sure that we keep doing that point around research and really sort of understanding what's going on, because a lot of the research around video games and addiction hasn't been very high quality, to be totally honest. And I know that one of the big things at the moment that the industry in the UK is supporting is trying to do a lot more research to get actual scientific data and answers on it. Essentially, it's quite a challenging and difficult topic, but I would still say that my main piece of advice would be make sure that you have it as part of a wider selection of things that you do. And then the other thing is that if you are feeling like you're having trouble, step away. I mean, at the moment in the UK, there's 900,000 different games you can download across all the platforms. So you can go and find something else as well. And I think that's a really healthy thing to be thinking about doing too.
Is it not also worth being slightly cynical about that? Because, look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a specialist, you know, take this with a pinch of salt. But it seems to me that the people who struggle with addiction, in whatever kind, are people who've got some unhappiness in their lives and they use whatever it is they become addicted to as a way of escaping that.
Addictive personalities. Yeah.
So I had a mate whose auntie was addicted to Krispy Kremes and literally went and bought 2 boxes of them and sat in the woods and didn't tell anyone about it, gained a load of weight, and people were like terrified, like there must be something medically wrong with you.
Is this a true story?
It's an absolutely true story. She was like addicted to the entire time.
And she went
was
in the
awake,
woods.
She was just thinking about eating Krispy Kremes, and so when she would take her kids to school in the morning, she would go and buy 2 dozen and hide in the woods and eat 2 dozen Krispy Kremes. All I mean is, I always think of that when people talk about addiction. Yeah. Because that's about something else going on, right?
Speaking of games. Did I scare you? I'm sorry.
No, I was excited. I was very excited.
Speaking of games. Speaking of games, we have a quiz. Looking at you because you might be the expert, but Rufus, I hope you prove to be the underdog in this situation. In the adaptation of the Silent Hill movie by Christoph Gans, what's special about the nurses, the famous enemies of the game? A, they're robotic. B, they're played by dancers. Or C, they are in 3D.
C? I mean, the people who play them are surely in 3D. Like, so I'm imagining that that's the thinking on it.
And they exist in time, so they were 4D.
I'd also like to point out, this is not strictly a games question, this is actually a film question.
All right, well, you know, blame the scriptwriters, don't blame me.
So you're taking 3D, I'm gonna go for robots.
The actual answer is B, they're played by dancers. In Theme Hospital, gamers have to manage a hospital and patients who are suffering from weird diseases. Which is not one of them? A, the invisibility syndrome, which consists of being invisible. B, the hypertongue syndrome, which consists of having a dangling tongue. C, the king syndrome, which consists of pretending to be Elvis Presley. Or D, the pigeon syndrome, which consists of buying all Apple devices.
Based on your face alone answering this, I'm going to go for the last one.
You sure?
It's D.
Yeah, okay. Correct, well done.
It is D. No.
All right, next question. The Theme Hospital video game was so successful that it had an official sequel. Of the following answers, only one is true. Which one? A, Theme Circus. B, 3 Point Hospital. C, Theme Aquarium. Or D, Hospital Boris Johnson, where there's no hope, so you just sit there.
Existentially,
it
feels like the last one is true. So,
so you're going for that one?
I mean, it's tempting, isn't it? I would guess Theme Circus.
I know there was a spiritual successor to the game, and one of the names was similar to it. I think it's 3 Point Hospital.
Okay, so you're saying Theme
Circus,
and you're saying Theme. Both wrong.
Both incorrect.
Just had to clarify.
That's good.
Theme Aquarium.
Theme Aquarium.
Yeah.
There we go.
Video games have amazing effects on our health. Which of these statements is false? Call of Duty can improve your eyesight. Mario Kart players would be better sexual partners. Mario games act on your brain like steroids. Or D, StarCraft would make you smarter.
Goodness me. I'm going to go for B.
The sexual partners.
Yeah, because I just imagine that Mario Kart just makes you very competitive, and I just can't see that being useful.
You think that's the hallmark of being a great lover?
No.
Hey, I'm gonna win!
There we go. I think I might have misheard the question here. So I thought,
should I read it out again?
Yeah, because I thought,
all right,
it was the one which
let me read it out again, all right? So which of these statements is false?
That's the reason why I've gone for B.
False.
That's
yeah, which of these statements is false?
Well, I'd imagined it the other way around entirely. And just as somebody who's played thousands of hours of Mario Kart, I'm like, it's gonna be me, baby!
Here we go! I just imagined it now. Yeah. Not personally, no. Sorry, moving on.
No, because now I'm doing the same, where, you know, at various moments, dum 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 dum.
I just started thinking that.
Again, can't do any of this.
Sorry, imagine someone put that on. I'm sorry.
I once had a playlist playing for a romantic engagement, and at the point where that was really building to its final moment, the theme tune to Bewitched came on. And let me tell you, what a transportive experience that is. Da, 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 da. Oversharing. Which of them is false? I think it doesn't act like steroids. I think that one's false.
You are right, George.
Yes.
You are wrong, Rufus. Next question. How many Pokemon can we leave in the Poke Center? A, 4, B, 5, C, 6, or D, they are understaffed and demand more resources, so none.
I mean, health service satire, right? You know,
Yeah.
That's punchy.
If only we could find a nonagenarian to walk up and down a garden for those Pokemon.
Totally.
Do you know, I've just never played Pokemon. I'm going to guess 4.
Okay.
So I think it's C, because I think you lose 6 to heal.
Both wrong. The answer's 5. All right, next question. How many times do we have to get hit before we die in Ghosts and Goblins? A, 2 times. The first time, Arthur loses his arm and finds himself in his underpants. The second time, he dies. B, 3 times. Or C, 8 times. The first time, Arthur loses his armor. The second time, he loses his mohair sweater. The third time, he loses his tweed pants, etc.
It's twice.
It is
That
twice.
is one I actually know.
Yeah. that
Well
is.
done. Okay.
Okay.
I would be questioning
There
you
we
if you didn't know that one.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. What makes it possible to raise one's self-control measure in Red Dead Redemption 2? A, drinking a Red Bull vodka. B, smoking a cigarette. C, reading an Ashtanga yoga manual. Say that 3 times fast. Or D, drinking an Irish whiskey.
I think it's smoking a fag.
Yeah?
I think it is, but might not be.
Really concrete answer from
Yeah,
both of you, Judge.
solid.
There's definitely a level in Red Dead where you drink a load of Irish whiskey.
And then shout, Lenny!
And but there's a guy you're sort of looking for, and all the characters in the bar become that guy. So I can't imagine that they would have made the mechanic that
Self-control.
has increased your self-control. So I think it's got to be smoking a fag.
Smoking a fag.
Smoking a frag? You are correct. Well done. I think George won the quiz though.
Yeah, George did win
Sorry.
the quiz.
Well done,
No,
George.
rightly.
Thank you.
You remain the king.
I remain the king for another day at least.
Yeah.
Thank you both for giving me your insight about mental health and video games and for joining me on my quiz. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for preparing a quiz for us.
Thank the scriptwriters, that wasn't me. No, I'm joking. You're welcome. This is our top 5 list of healthy things from video games you should most probably avoid in real life. First of all, food is a common source of health in video games. But isn't it weird that of all the edible things out there, strawberry lollipops are the healthy food in Lollipop Chainsaw? It seems doubtful, but if they can protect you from a nasty zombie virus, then we could ignore a little bit of diabetes. 4th place is taken by lovely fairies who have been saving Link's life for many years, even though he traps them in bottles. But we wouldn't trust mythical creatures with healing us in real life. Blood transfusions are usually a good thing, but those blood vials in Bloodborne are pretty rank since I heard that the blood comes straight from the dead bodies. Ugh, nasty. BioShock takes 2nd place in celebrating bad habits. You can consume plenty of alcohol and cigarettes throughout the game. It may ease the pain of all the terrible things you experience in the game, but be prepared for a massive hangover. And here is number 1. In the radioactive world of Fallout 3, it's tough to find anything that's remotely healthy for your body. But believe it or not, you can drink from the toilet, for a healing effect. Don't assume it will do you any good in real life. Consider yourself warned.